Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Thursday, July 7th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 58 days, the game against Michigan in 142 days. This is supposed to be the quiet part of the college football calendar. Virtually every coach that you can think of in the country is sitting on a beach somewhere or up in the mountains celebrating the last few weeks before the start of fall camp. But this year, thanks to conference realignment, things are a little crazier than normal. And as of the time we're recording this, USC and UCLA are the only schools who have officially moved leagues. But rumors and reports are flying fast and furious right now. But everyone from Oregon and Washington to Notre Dame and Clemson and Florida State, and frankly, just about everywhere in between. So the Pac-12 announced that they are forming what they're calling, quote, a loose alliance with the ACC. Still not really clear what that actually means. And right now it feels like the only thing that we can be pretty sure of is that college football is going to be very different by the time this is all said and done. So how are we going to make sense of it? I thought, I know. I'm going to call the guy who I know who is the most connected of anyone I know, the great Bill Greene. He knows everyone everywhere, and just talk to someone who had some really interesting thoughts to say about some of these different leagues, as well as what the sport could look like when the conference realignment carousel finally stops spinning. Bill, thanks for being here.
Hey, good to be here, Tom.
So I guess I wanted to start with the most impactful sentence you had in your report. And that sentence was, quote, the ACC is dead and everyone knows it. And this is from someone who is, this is someone who's connected. So I thought, that's pretty direct. It's also pretty remarkable. So why did your guy think that? And what does it mean for the teams who in that league right now who don't have a safe landing spot in a place like the Big Ten or the SEC?
Yeah, the key thing is how many teams are going to be a part of this super alliance. Is it 40? Is it 48? Is it 60? The eventual goal, this coach thought after talking to his athletic director, the eventual goal is a 12 or a 16 team playoff. And they just maximize that revenue right out the door, which, I think money has always kind of driven the sport, but I think, money's up there a little higher than it always has been, I think, right now. And there's no pretense anymore that this is about educating young men and this is about maximizing money. So the key thing is how many schools survived this purge. I think the SEC and the Big Ten, all their schools, I think, are safe, including Rutgers and Vanderbilt. USC and UCLA didn't want to get left behind. They jumped. And I do think Oregon and Washington, and that doesn't matter what I think. The guy I talked to, and I actually talked to two separate coaches, they think Oregon and Washington jump soon. I know the ACC is saying that, all's hunky-dory, we're good. No one believes that. They think Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina are going to look for landing spots here. Maybe not soon, but behind the scenes, they believe that talks are going on there. So I think the thing is, who gets left out? There's going to be some pretty darn good programs left behind here. What happens with Baylor? What happens with Arizona State? Wake Forest? Is Virginia on the line here? Stanford, are they on the line? That's where it's going to get really interesting to me. For Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, you're going to have to beat everybody and be there in the end as they are right now, as they were 20 years ago. So it doesn't change too much, I don't think, for the elite schools. The big question to me is who gets chopped in this thing? And that's going to be interesting. And can they find their way in? Or are you out for good? Once you're out, you're out. Is there a way in that they think, okay, Vanderbilt, you haven't lived up to the obligations. So you're out and we're bringing Louisville in. Does that happen? Kind of like Euro soccer. It's amazing where this could be. I think we're seeing the tip of the iceberg right now, to be honest. Everybody thinks the USC and UCLA is just like a seismic revolution here. I don't think it is. I think it's the beginning of the end. And as we know it, and it just follows up Texas and Oklahoma, and there's going to be more. If I were Stanford, I think I'd be fighting to try to get in right now. And I don't know if anyone would take them. Where do they fit in? And who is the governing body, Tom? That was the one thing these coaches both said to me. Who is the governing body right now? It's not going to be the NCAA. No one believes that. So more questions than answers here.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is we keep hearing about the death of the NCAA? For years and years and years we've been talking about that. at least in terms of being the governing body of the sport of college football, if not, the entire thing. The NCAA tournament goes away because the NCAA goes away, and then it's the fill in the blank tournament later.
Right.
Do they have any sense if this is likely to be the NCAA goes away for college football, or the NCAA goes away, period? And you need someone to run the sport. So what's next?
No, the people I talked to thought, both coaches I talked to thought that the NCAA would remain for every other sport but football. But football is taking on a whole new life of its own. And life as we've known it all along, it's going to change, and it changed with the 4-team playoff. It changed with the 2-team playoff, so it's constantly been evolving, but this one's going to be seismic, I believe, when we get to the end of this. It's going to be the NFL 2.0. And to me, again, to go back to an earlier point, I think the question is how many teams make the cut? And then the teams that probably don't make the cut, they've got some pretty darn good coaches, Tom. Mm-hmm. So Luke Fickell, Matt Campbell, we're looking at you. Does this cause them to jump this year? You know what I mean? Where Matt Campbell normally would not look at, I don't know, Indiana. He might now. You know what I mean? Luke Fickell might not look at Mississippi State. He might now. So to me, that's the fascinating point. There are some really, really good coaches. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. These guys are excellent coaches, and they're going to want to have a seat at the table. So it started being wild here a couple of weeks ago with USC and UCLA. I think it's going to continue to be wild throughout the year. And the fun part could happen when coaches start getting fired. That could be just more turmoil than what we have now.
Yeah, so somehow college football seems like it's about to get crazier in a couple different ways, which I think
so.
Between the NIL and the transfer portal, you wouldn't have thought that was possible. It's like, we may have just started this whole process. You've mentioned a couple times how many teams would be in this, this top tier when this is all said and done. And I guess there's kind of two parts of that equation. We have a Power 5 conference structure right now. It's pretty clearly not going to be a Power 5. It's going to be a Power 2, a Power 3, a Power 4, right, whatever it is. And then how many teams are in these conferences? Because now the Big Ten and the SEC both have 16 teams now when the Oklahoma, Texas, USC, UCLA thing all goes through. Does it stop at 16? Do they go to 18? Do they go to 20? Does it go to 24? Is there any sense for number of power conferences and number of teams per conference where this could end up?
No, I didn't get an answer on that. The number that was floated to me, and these guys won't know either. They're just hearing what their athletic director's telling them. And the athletic director just along for the ride right now, too. There's no governing body right now for this new thing. So, but they thought like 24 apiece made sense. To get to a total of 48 would be a working number, they felt. But, whatever maximizes the most cash, the most revenue is where they're going to go. And if you're a fringe team, you better be bringing something to the table from a revenue point of view. You better not be a drag. If you're a drag on revenue, you ain't getting in. And if you bring positive revenue to the table, you're home free.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that you see, John Canzano and John Wilner, who are fantastic reporters out on the West Coast. They talk about that all the time in terms of Washington and Oregon, and will they hit the magic number for the Big Ten? And that's more the question than having to fly the volleyball team out to Seattle or to Eugene. It's can they hit the magic number in terms of TV revenue? Which this is I think this has been sort of the trend in college sports for quite a while, is TV kind of driving the bus for decades at this point. But yeah, it is pretty remarkable to see it just sort of laid bare like this, the way we are. And, another big piece of that TV pie is the playoffs. You mentioned earlier, it sounds like you're thinking this makes it more likely that the playoffs expand. We obviously talked about, a lot of talk about expanding the playoffs last year. That didn't go through. When this is all done, what do the playoffs look like? I mean, potentially we're talking about 48 teams in the sport. Does a quarter of the top tier of the sport make the playoff every year? More than that? Less than that? What do you think the playoffs are looking like when this is all done?
Yeah, I think 16 makes sense. And that's what the two coaches I took, we thought it would be either 12 or 16. But 16 makes you more money than 12. So 24 gets a little ridiculous. So I think 16 makes a ton of sense. And then instead of having Minnesota play Texas Tech in the Poulon Weed Eater Bowl on a Tuesday night, you get LSU and Michigan in a first round playoff game on a Tuesday night. So that puts 10 times the eyeballs on your game, so it makes a lot of sense. I mean, to me, it really does. And then if you could have a New Year's Day deal where you have, a ton of quarterfinal games, wow. I mean, you'd have eyeballs on there from noon to midnight, and it would be sick. It'd be crazy. So I think there's a general idea of where this is headed, but I think until they have a governing body, and we know, is the college football playoff system going to run everything in college football? I don't, does those group of people, do they run everything from now on? Or is it a new governing body? And what happens to the student athletes? What about academic requirements? Where do you go with NIL? You just throw it all out, make an NFL football, or even more than NFL football. There's more rules in NFL football in terms of free agency and contract. I don't know. It's crazy where this could be, and both the coaches I talked to did not think that all this increased revenue would somehow not funnel down to the players. They don't think NIL is going to be enough to satisfy these players. So, and the schools definitely don't want unionization. So there could be a lot of give and take where the players get a slice of the pie in addition to NIL.
And, the crazy thing about this is I feel like I need to kind of caveat at the beginning of every show. Here's exactly what's happening as of the time we're recording, because it's like before this thing goes up, it's entirely possible Notre Dame's in the Big Ten and Oregon and Washington are in the SEC for some reason, and the whole sport has changed. But also, it could be 2 years. There's no guarantee that any of this stuff is happening this week, but also it could. It feels like we're just kind of like on edge. Did they have any sense for the timetable on any of this, or are they just kind of throwing their hands up and going, well, we'll see, just kind of like the rest of us?
No, they think it's an ongoing process and could change by the day, but they didn't have an idea of when the finished product would hit the field there. But mentioning Notre Dame, I know all the reports now are Notre Dame is declining to join a conference, and they are going to remain independent. And neither of my coaches, they laughed at that thought. They thought absolutely they're going to fight it as long as they can. But at some point, Notre Dame will be forced to join the Big Ten. And, all along in the history of college football, we go back to Newt Rockne, Notre Dame has run the show in college football. You don't tell them anything. They tell you how they're going to do things. And the NCAA has pretty much accepted that. Well, in the new era of college football, Notre Dame is going to need the new alliance more than the new alliance is going to need them. So Notre Dame, both my guys felt without question, Notre Dame will be in the Big Ten. Now, maybe not this week, maybe not a year from now, but when the rubber finally meets the road and the new alliance tells them, we need to know, are you in or out, that they'll be in.
Yeah, they're making $15 million a year under their current TV deal. That number is going to go up quite a bit whenever that re-ups in 25 or 26, something like that. But, even if that re-ups to $40 or $50 million a year, if the rest of the Big Ten is all making $100 million a year, it gets hard to compete at some point. So, yeah, that they may fight that as long as they can, but it does sort of feel inevitable that that's where it ends up, whether that's a week from now or 2025 or sometime after that. But it does sort of feel inevitable that that's where that ends up. But man, oh man, what a time to be alive. College football, I don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to be different. It's probably going to be pretty exciting. It's going to be quite a ride to get between point A and point B to get there. So, Bill, thank you for your insight and on all this stuff. I know this is a very hot topic right now, and everyone kind of wants to know everything. And appreciate you being willing to say I don't know when you don't know, because I think there are folks who have an inclination to just sort of, well, I'm going to have an answer, and even if I don't have an answer, appreciate that too. So yeah. it is quite a hot topic right now, and I'm sure probably not the last show we're going to do on that as we move along this summer. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.